The Covenanter tank was not exactly a star of the Second World War. German technological advances and a fickle engine rendered the awkwardly named model obsolete months after it first left an English factory, and none of the 1,700 vehicles built ever actually fired a shot in anger. But for Canadian troops on the eve of a historic battle, the Covenanter proved indispensable. Converted into a training tool, it helped ready this country's infantry forces for their biggest moment of the war, the D-Day invasion, whose 73rd anniversary is Tuesday. The soldiers from Canada abandoned the tanks as they left their British training grounds for the beaches of Normandy. But now one of only two surviving examples of the real war machine has literally been unearthed from the English countryside, where oddly enough the departing infantryman had buried it 7 decades ago. This is a piece of Canadian history, says Craig Moore, a British tank enthusiast who helped in the excavation late last month. It's not often that you get dug up a tank used by the Canadian Army before D-Day. Right double quotation mark. The machine came out of the ground at what is now a vineyard rusty and packed with chalky soil, but the military restoration buff who spearheaded and funded the dig, Rick Wedlock, plans to bring it back to actual working order. The project is also to be featured on a History Channel series, though the TV network was not the driving force behind the excavation as British media reports suggested, said Moore. Jeff Noakes, a historian at Ottawa's Canadian War Museum, applauded the salvage, calling it a tangible reminder of the estimated 500,000 Canadian soldiers who passed through Britain during the war, many of them undergoing advanced training before D-Day. The tank being recovered from 3 or 4 meters down in a vineyard really helps bring back to life, so to speak, the events of almost 3/4 of a century ago, he said. The Covenanter was relatively cutting edge as it started life in 1939, fast and with a gun able to knock out any German opposition. But when the Germans added more armor and bigger guns to their Panzer tanks, it was suddenly an underperformer. An unreliable motor and a design that stupidly put the radiator at the front, exposed to enemy fire, sealed its fate, said Moore, editor of TankHunter.com. The Canadian 3rd Infantry Division, training in a rural swath of Surrey, south of London, adopted several to help get ready for June 6, 1944, invasion of Europe. They would have been used to practice fighting alongside tanks, and toward the end to learn how to stop enemy tanks. In fact, one side of the excavated Covenanter was badly damaged, apparently hit by an explosive satchel charge during an exercise, Moore said. Used tanks were actually coveted by metal scrap merchants back then, but the visiting troops probably lacked the time or contacts to find one, and, Canadians being nice people, buried the leftovers so they wouldn't be a hazard to the local farmer and his cows. One was later dug up in the 1970s and eventually restored, sitting now in at the U.K.'s Bovington Tank Museum. The other one was more or less forgotten in land that became Denby's wine estate, until Wedlock heard about it and went searching with a sophisticated metal detector. It is the second one left in the world, and both were used by Canadian infantry, said Moore. This is an incredibly rare and historically valuable World War II tank. Right double quotation mark. Hauling the 16-ton object from its tomb required a tank recovery vehicle from the period, and a Vietnam War-era military forklift, he said. Moore is now asking that Canadians whose family members trained with the 3rd Infantry Division in Surrey lend out photographs they might have of the scene, to augment the future display of the tank.